All righty, welcome back for another episode of Two Plain Sports. Today, Wednesday, September 21st, middle of the week, game week number 4 for Oklahoma. Almost already a third of the way through the regular season, which is hard to believe. We wait so long, so many months in the off season, and then football season shows up, and then it's gone before we even know it. So, anyway, Oklahoma's rolling 3-0. We're going to be talking the upcoming game against Kansas State. We're going to be giving a preview there. And then we're going to be talking a little bit of Bedlam, what Mike Gundy had to say today about the series and our thoughts on what he had to say. I know some people that are watching this probably have some thoughts as well. It's pretty funny. It's interesting what Oklahoma State's saying from their side. But before we get into it, I just want to say we appreciate it. We're like 20 subscribers away from 5,100 subscribers. Hit the subscribe button, helps us out a lot. Also, what helps us even more is when you like the video and then you comment on the video. If you hit the if you like the video, which is free, it helps bring in more Sooner fans and more opinions and more eyes on these videos. It helps us and it brings in good conversation. It gives us different perspective. So be sure to hit the like button and then stay around for Jose's in the video challenge and do that and do both of those. It helps us out a lot. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to leave us a review. Follow us on there. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Everything's linked in the description below. We've knocked on the door 2,100 Twitter followers, so be sure to help us out on that platform as well. So, Jose, OU is playing Kansas State, coming off a huge win. Oklahoma's coming off a huge win, 49-14 against Nebraska. Tulane ended up beating Kansas State 17-10 last weekend. One team's coming off and rolling, and another team really kind of just fell flat on their face. And now these two teams get to play. What are some of your thoughts, overall takeaways, and initial impression of this matchup?
I think this game has the same danger level that the Nebraska game had leading into it. I think for the most part, fans expected a better game out of Nebraska, at least the Nebraska offense, but Oklahoma's defense was able to neutralize them. And we all thought because they just scarred Hot Frost, they're all going to rally around Mikey Joseph and, figure out a way to at least compete in the game. They didn't. I think this game, clearly they did not fire their head coach, but they just came off a very tough loss to a team that they probably expected to beat, maybe not handedly, but at least come out with a W and come into this game 3-0 and potentially ranked. That didn't happen. Tulane beat them. And I think from what I, was digging into, seems like a lot of fans are slightly pissed about Adrian Martinez having such a terrible year so far. He only has about 300 yards going into this game, passing. Deuce Vaughn is still having very good stats as an individual. So he's still definitely a big focal piece for the offense and the person that will ultimately need to be stopped. Again, similar to last week, if we can stop the running back, we can neutralize this offense as much as possible. But I think that's the key going into the going into the game for the defense for Oklahoma. And then on the offensive side, the big boys in the trenches are going to get challenged by their star defensive end, Felix and Nduke Uzama. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. But he is a very talented defensive end for Kansas State. And I think he could put a lot of pressure on the line, especially if he ever has to if he challenges Mettauer on the interior. Mettauer did have a good bounce back last week, but Nebraska's defensive line, even though they can match up physically, they just were not good enough to really do anything against the line. I think Felix could put some pressure on them.
Yeah, definitely Felix Uzama. He's going to be the highest quality pass rusher that Oklahoma has faced to date. So that is definitely going to be a tall task for whoever's going to end up, playing against him. I'd imagine it'll be a hodgepodge of players will be just playing, as he moves around. But what I kind of thought in what we've been talking about in our preseason, game by game breakdown was that this game could be a game where Oklahoma can be kind of a trap game for them. You're coming off a huge win on the road at your an old rival in Nebraska, and you want Nebraska, and then you come home and you play against Kansas State, which historically, at least recently, last year was a 6-point win for Oklahoma. The 2020 season, K-State beat Oklahoma 38-35 in Norman. And then in 2019, Oklahoma lost 48-41 at Manhattan. So the last three matchups have been decided by 6 points, 3 points, 7 points. So it's been a one-possession game in every single matchup in the last 3 years. So historically, in short term, I know if you look way back, Oklahoma has dominated for the most part. But I know when we were there at OU for school, Kansas State came in and beat Oklahoma in Norman. I think it was 31-30. It was Honeycutt missed some extra points and field goals. So Kansas State can beat Oklahoma, and they're not scared to. That's half the battle with some of these Big 12 schools where I feel like that they come in, scared. Kansas State will not come in scared. Kleiman will have his guys ready to play. I expect the game to be competitive initially, but I think Oklahoma overall will run away with it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, and maybe the I don't want to say fear, but the reservations that we've had about this Oklahoma versus Kansas State matchup in the recent years isn't because of talent. It really is because of coaching, especially over the last few years. The challenges were because the coaching just wasn't really doing anything to change their approach to every single game. I'm sure that, Kleiman, after the first game he played against Lincoln Riley, he knew, all right, this is what to look out for. And then he applied what he learned, and it worked out for him. He challenged Oklahoma a lot more in the next matchup. I think we should expect something different here. I really do. I think again, it's going to be the defensive line for Oklahoma, and they haven't let down yet. I don't expect them to anytime soon. If the defensive line they don't really have to neutralize Deuce Vaughn, but just not really don't let him beat us. He can have 60 yards, 80 yards, but he's going to carry it like 30 times to do that. Make Adrian Martinez beat us with his arm. That dude is bad. Not a good quarterback. People are going to say you need to respect your opponent more. I get that. I get that perspective, but he's just objectively not a good college quarterback. And I don't think he really ever has. I think he's been kind of helped out at his old spot, Kansas State. As much as that defense does to help out the offense, he just doesn't do enough to help the defense out in return. They can't score points whenever they keep the ball in his hand. And it's going to be tough for them to do that if Oklahoma, again, can do what they have been on the defensive side of the ball. These defenses, ranking-wise, match up pretty well. In scoring defense, Kansas State is 12th, tied with I can't remember the school that they're tied with for 12th. Oklahoma's right behind them. I think they average like 9.7 points per game. Oklahoma averages 10. And you can make the argument that Oklahoma can average less per game because of that trash time touchdown that they let up against Nebraska. Oklahoma, for starters versus starters, Oklahoma's defense is better. Starters versus starters, Oklahoma's offense is significantly better than the Kansas State offense. As long as the game starts in Oklahoma's favor, I don't think Kansas State really has a shot, especially given that it's a night game in Norman. The crowd is going to be behind Oklahoma. I mean, hopefully people don't start leaving if it's a blowout in the third quarter, but I really expect it to be a very similar game to the Nebraska game.
And Deuce Vaughn, he is a guy that when I think Kansas State, at least recently, that's the guy I think about. He's given Oklahoma problems ever since he came to Kansas State in his first season. What was it, in 2020 was his first season, because this is his third one. His first two matchups with Oklahoma, he's been getting 150 total yards and scoring one touchdown in each matchup. But in both matchups, the key is his receiving yards he's averaging over 100 yards of receiving. So the biggest key for Oklahoma is not necessarily getting him between the tackles. It's can you go out and go, send Danny Stutzman out there, and can you make open field tackles on Deuce Vaughn whenever they run a quick screen or a quick slant for him, or just get him out in space? That's where he's most dangerous. And Oklahoma is going to have to place an emphasis, because that's what Martinez is going to look for. He's going to look for the easy dump off, and Deuce Vaughn is going to make something out of nothing. That's just what he does. And if you take that safety blanket away and make Adrian Martinez beat you down, throwing down the field, Oklahoma's going to pick them apart. That's the biggest thing. Is we talked about in the first few matchups, Oklahoma was going to have to watch for, a guy, a receiver and a running back. Oklahoma only has to worry about Deuce Vaughn. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think Adrian Martinez, if Casey Thompson can't beat you, I don't think Adrian Martinez is going to beat you. And while Adrian Martinez played well against Oklahoma last year, so did Casey Thompson. So just because someone did last year against the previous staff that could not coach defense does not mean that they're going to do well against a guy, a staff that can coach defense. As long as they take Deuce Vaughn away, I don't see this being an issue at all. I think the crowd's going to be behind them, like you said. It's something to think about, and this is a weird concept, is do you remember how Lon Kruger always struggled with Kansas State when he played basketball? I mean, he couldn't go on the road at Manhattan and beat them, and even would sometimes lose at home against Kansas State, and that's his alma mater. Well, this is where Brent Venables went to school and played. I don't think that has any impact at all, but it's just a weird coincidence that I just think about. It's like, oh my gosh, Kansas State. We got a coach that went to Kansas State. We couldn't beat him in basketball. Is Venables going to have the same issue? I don't think so, but it would be an odd coincidence.
No, and kind of to piggyback off that thought, I'm not sure if you saw it, but Venables mentioned that he was texting with Coach Snyder, and he was congratulating him on the 3-0 start, but told him that he can't continue. He said, "Go get it, your next dub." And then I guess he looked at the schedule and told him not this week though, because clearly Snyder's still rooting for Kansas State. I mean, I really do not see this game being very close this week, and I don't know. I just think that this Oklahoma this team as a whole is rolling. It's at home. If this was in Manhattan, I would have the exact same thoughts that I had last week when we were heading into Nebraska. The crowd is going to impact. Maybe not to the same level, because Oklahoma showed that they can play against in a hostile environment, but Manhattan is a tough place to play. It is a conference game, so they're going to be, extra prepared. They want to at least make it to the Big 12 championship, and to do that at this point, they're going to have to go undefeated here, or try to get very close to undefeated during conference play. So, I mean, I think Oklahoma's in the driver's seat. I really do. Deuce Vaughn, to talk about him a little bit, yeah, he can make plays with the ball. If he's running it, if he's going to catch it out of the backfield. I'd love to see Jaren Kanak come in and get some opportunities. He is the fastest linebacker on the team, and if you match him up to shadow Deuce, I really think that he would be best equipped physically to neutralize him as much as possible.
And let's talk more about that. So with Deshaun White, he was playing really well against Nebraska, and then he made a mistake, and it happens. And you can't be upset with the guy, but that opened the door for Kanak, and Kanak really wasn't in the rotation per se, like in the start of any game, at least recently. Kanak basically has no idea what he's doing. That's what Venables says. It said that he's just running around and he's just making plays. With him now playing, a little over a half of football, does this open up the rotation for him? I feel like with Deshaun White, missing that half, it gave Kanak some time to put some film out there. I do agree. I kind of wonder now. Kanak has played in 3 games. Venables is going to have to make a decision. I mean, he's got one more. Are you going to redshirt him or not? I kind of don't think he's going to redshirt. I think he's going to be playing all year, not necessarily starting, but I do think he's going to start rotating with Deshaun White, Justin Harrington at that cheetah spot. I think as this year goes on, he's one of those guys that not necessarily a starter, but he's going to be a heavily rotated guy. And Deuce Vaughn is a guy that, you would want him in against because of his quickness and open field tackle ability.
And you mentioned it. Venables said Koenig has no idea what the hell he's doing out there, and he was still making plays. In the video, in our instant reaction after the Nebraska game, we mentioned Koenig and how good of a game he had, led the team in tackles when it was all said and done. Someone in the comment section went and said that they believed Koenig missed a lot of plays and instead of making a lot of plays, or missed as many as he made. I don't think that's necessarily true. I'm sure he did miss some tackles. You can't expect perfection. That just doesn't happen. Sometimes you're going to get got. You just have to get yours more than you get got. Kind of the name of the game at this level of football. The other guys on the other side of the ball are going to be talented as well. I really do think Koenig, there's no way that you can force him to redshirt at this point. That linebacker position, if anything happens where someone, again, knock on wood, gets hurt, Koenig's got to be the next guy up and to bring in. And forcing him to redshirt, I don't think benefits Oklahoma in this year. And it definitely wouldn't benefit Koenig for the year. He's very naturally talented. Imagine once he knows what he's doing and Venables feels confident and Koenig's between the ears and physically, that dude's going to be a stud. And pairing him with Stutzman, it's going to be tough for any team to really match up against Oklahoma's defense.
And in a scenario where later in the season, in championship November or Big 12 championship or even the playoffs, if a Deshaun White or an Awegbu or someone like that makes a mistake, barring, assuming that they're not injured and they just get ejected because of targeting, you got to have a guy that has some sort of experience. Could you imagine playing Koenig and being forced to play him, and he's only played in like 2 games, and then in late November, early December, you're having to play him in the most meaningful game, and hasn't seen the field in 3 months or 2 months. Mm-hmm. It pays off to keep him in the rotation. So I think he'll get some playing time. How much, I'm not sure, but I do think that he will be in the rotation, and just to make sure that we've got that experience and he's learning every week. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like this defense as a whole, which is vastly improved, is still learning. I mean, the offense is still learning as well, and it's looked good. It looked a lot better against Nebraska, and I still think both of them are on an upward trajectory. So as far as, let's talk about, because I think we talked about in the last preview, who are your guys that you're looking at to be like the big, like your expectations are really high? Who's going to be the breakout, player, or what expectations do you have for a few guys on the offense and defense? Do you have anyone in particular in mind?
I think Dillon Gabriel for the offense, and I can already see people saying, well, clearly Dillon Gabriel, he's the quarterback, but it's different. I mean, when we've talked about it in the past, I've called out different guys. Last week, I mentioned Marvin Mims. I think before that, I said Eric Gray. I think that this week it is Dillon Gabriel because he needs to play clean, how like he has. Don't force the ball, don't turn the ball over. And given the fact that he made a play with his legs last week, that's going to be a big weapon for Oklahoma in this game. I would not be surprised if there were player props in college football. I would take the Dillon Gabriel over rushing yards, whatever it is, because that he's going to need to make plays with his feet. He's going to escape the pocket, get a couple first downs, maybe even score a rushing touchdown. I think that aspect of his game is going to be used more during the Kansas State game because they do have a good defensive line, especially with Uzama. He's going to challenge us. To another guy on the offensive line. I wish I could have found out a little bit more about Uzama. I know he's talented, but more so where he lines up. If they just keep him on one side of the line or have him move around, because he is their most talented guy on that in that unit. If he is just on one side, I'd be interested to see which side they line him up on. Do they line him up on Dylan's blind side to try to, sneak in a little bit more pressure where Dylan may not be able to feel it? Or do they go for the weakness of Oklahoma's offensive line and go to the left side with Anton and McCade Mettauer and try to get him to get in Dylan's face a little bit more? I'll be interested to see where that happens on the defensive side of the ball. I really want to see Jaron Kanik. I hope he's out there. If not, Deshaun White. I don't know if you recall at the beginning, before the season started, I mentioned that cheetah position. Whenever we saw the depth chart week 1, it was Harrington and Deshaun White. And I mentioned White's probably going to be coming in more whenever it's a team that's not going to be pass heavy, relies on the run to establish their offense, and Harrington will be the guy to get the nod when it is a more pass heavy team. And that's what I think. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if you noticed the same, but in the first three games, and maybe I'm just looking for confirmation, but for some confirmation for my own take, but it seems like that's what's happened. We played Kent State, a more pass heavy team, and Justin Harrington was out there more than Deshaun White, from what I recall. Last week, Nebraska was relying on the run to establish their offense, and we saw Deshaun White out there a lot more. I think Jaron Kanik has the physical ability to take Deshaun White's spot. He's got the natural talent. If it's not Jaron Kanik, then Deshaun White's going to need to have a big game because that cheetah position is going to be challenged a lot by Deuce Vaughn.
It will be. So I do agree. I think Justin Harrington makes a lot more sense whenever you're playing a more pass-heavy offense, and then you look more for a run-stopping guy like Deshaun White. As far as the offense, who I'm looking for is, can Jalil Farouk build on the momentum he got in the Nebraska game? He arguably should have scored twice if, Dylan Gabriel would have put the ball on him whenever he, shook the defender. But overall, he had a really solid game. Can Jalil Farouk put together back-to-back games? If he can do that, I'll start to feel like, okay, he's going to be a legitimate threat and a part of this offense. And I agree with you along the offensive line. Can they handle Uzama and keep Gabriel clean? I think that's going to be a focal point every week, because you cannot let Gabriel get hit, because if he gets hurt, this season totally turns around and it turns upside down. But really, I'm looking for Jalil Farouk. I feel really good about the running backs. Eric Gray, Marcus Major are going to put together really strong games. Can Eric Gray continue, putting together 100 yards plus a game? I think he can. I think he's well on his way to 1,200 total yards this year, and he's clearly running back number 1. As far as the defense goes, I'm looking at that linebacking core. Can they contain Deuce Vaughn? It's going to be on Danny Stutzman, Deshaun White, Harrington, Jaron Kanik to go out there and go be a coverage linebacker. That's been one of the biggest issues with Oklahoma over the last 5 years, is the linebackers can't cover. But now I feel like they can. They, whenever they always would put out either a tight end or send the running back out into the flat, Oklahoma's linebackers couldn't do it. This year, I feel like they can. Between Stutzman, Kanik, and Deshaun White, they're going to be able to contain or at least keep Deuce Vaughn at bay anyway, just to slow him down. I think they can. They've got the speed. And I'm looking at, does Kenai Walker get to play again? A lot. Kansas State, while Adrian Martinez has struggled to throw, their leading receiver is Malik Knowles. He's a senior, 6'3", 200-pound wide receiver from Mansfield, Texas. While he doesn't have a lot of receiving yards, granted, because Adrian Martinez can't throw the ball right now, he's 6'3". You saw last week where there was a 6'1" and 6'2" wide receiver. You saw Kenai Walker play a decent amount, opposite of Woody Washington. Will that be the same while Malik Knowles might be going back to back, going side to side? I feel like 6'3" is a large wide receiver. And if you're Jaden Davis, it's tough when you're only 5'10", and Kenai Walker 6'1", 6'2". So I'm, and Walker played pretty well. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on, does Walker take that next step and get more playing time? But overall, it's just containing Deuce Vaughn, and then can Jalil Farouk build on his next game and become a legitimate, relied upon threat for Oklahoma.
I like that. I like that call out. I definitely did not think about Kenai Walker. I remember him playing a lot, but yeah, I think That's a good thing to bring up, because playing against big wide receivers, we're going to need some big corners out there, and that's where Kanai gets his shot. Right, we were all surprised that Jaden Davis was a starting corner opposite of Woody, and he will still get his playing time, but him being at his stature, it will be tough to keep him out on the field when we're playing against these 6'3" wide receivers that can just go over top of him.
Yeah. So let's just, a little preview to the bets. Oklahoma currently, as we're recording this, is a 13-point favorite. I think, me personally, I think Oklahoma covers that, and that's comfortably. I think Oklahoma's on a mission right now, and they're going to make a statement starting with conference play. I think it's going to be similar to Clemson, where a few, like in the last 5 years, especially when Trevor Lawrence was there, where Clemson was so far and away the best team in their conference that it was just like they were just sleepwalking through and just hammering every single team that they play. And that's the feel I'm starting to get from this team, where they're going to be so far and away the best team, maybe minus Texas, where that game might be a little closer. I think they're going to be able to hammer most of these teams as they go through. I don't buy Kansas being a legitimate threat. I don't buy, all the big games are at home. So I think Oklahoma rolls. I think they beat them by 24 points.
I definitely think Oklahoma covers. And it's because it's at home. The fact that it's at home is definitely making me not think about it too much, because last week I definitely thought about it way too much and ended up convincing myself that Nebraska was going to be able to cover the points. I don't think that's the case this week. As I mentioned, I really do believe that Deuce Vaughn is the only weapon they have, and as long as he doesn't get like 200 total yards, we'll be fine. If he gets 100, that's all right. He's going to get his. We just got to get ours more than he gets his.
Yeah. So I don't know. Feel pretty comfortable. Just hoping that this team gets up for the game. I don't really ever doubt a Brent Venables led team won't be motivated for any given game. I always was worried about the previous staff. He's proven that he's got the guys motivated and they're locked in. So all right, let's move on to another fun topic, our last topic of this show. Bedlam, as far as football goes, is done for the foreseeable future. Once Oklahoma leaves for the SEC, reports came out today, according to Oklahoma State's AD Chad Weidberg. We don't have any openings to play them. We're full unless there's significant undertakings to make games happen. It can't happen. Mike Gundy basically said any discussions on the school, about his school's role in the future of Bedlam, that it's childish. Gundy came out and said that Oklahoma followed Texas to the SEC for the money. It's again, I think the best thing for Oklahoma State, for their program, is to play Oklahoma. And the reason why it is because when you look at the Big 12 after Oklahoma and Texas do eventually leave, their marquee games and their TV revenue and their national spotlight will go down. If you can keep this, they're going to have a solid conference, and arguably it'll be better than the Pac-12, as a whole. But if you lose these, two marquee brands, it takes you down. But if you could keep Oklahoma on your schedule, you're going to get that nationally televised game every year, guaranteed, and most likely prime time. As long as you're solid, Oklahoma is going to be good. I just think overall, Oklahoma State should try to navigate and try to schedule this. And I think they're scheduled through 2032 as far as Oklahoma State's out of conference opponents. So what do you think?
Yeah. Before today, I really didn't feel one way or another towards Oklahoma State. They were just kind of another opponent. I know it's technically a rival, but we kick their ass more often than we lose. I think we actually tie more often than we lose against them, or did tie more often. But after what Gundy said today and all this all what's been transpiring with this move and how it's really Oklahoma State doesn't want to do it. Like, it's not hard to cancel non-conference games. They're just sad that they didn't get included in this move, because if they got the same opportunity to move to the SEC to get more money, they would have taken it. And I don't blame them. That's at the end of the day, that is their AD's job. That's Gundy's job, is to try to put them in a position to financially benefit as well as put out a good product on the field. They are butthurt about it, and I genuinely don't really like that school I guess I never really liked them, but I at least kind of respected them because they do love their program, but not anymore. I think they cry about it way too much. I think it's foolish to say that Oklahoma followed Texas for the money. I mean, anyone would have done what Joe C and Texas's AD did. They're just mad that they didn't get included in the deal. Now, he also mentioned that it's not their responsibility. Like, it actually is, because Oklahoma and Joe Castiglione have said that they are still open to working something out with Oklahoma State. We can't just kind of put you on our schedule and hope you show up. You have to agree. And if you don't, we can't put you on the schedule. Like, the AD and the president have to come together and say, all right, it really does benefit them a lot more. It benefits Oklahoma too, but it seems like they want Oklahoma to pay for them as if they were a non-conference group of 5 game. Why would Oklahoma do that? It doesn't benefit Oklahoma to pay Oklahoma State just to play them. Like, this should be something that is easily worked out. There's plenty of in-state rivalry games that happen, even though they're not in the same conference. Iowa State, Florida. Like, it can be done. They just don't want to do it.
And I'm looking at, actually, I thought they were booked through 2032. I thought that's what I read, but I'm looking at this website, FBS schedules. 2025, they just have Oregon and Tulsa on the books. There's a game right there. Granted, 2026 and 2027. I mean, you look at their cupcake games. I mean, you can get rid of a Murray State, a Western Illinois. What's funny is they did agree to like an 8-year agreement, a home and home with Tulsa. I mean, man, that's a lot of home and homes with Tulsa, looking for a cupcake game there. You've got Southeastern Louisiana. I mean, these are games where you can get out, and looks like 2025, even if they don't want to get out any of them, 2025 has an opening, 2029, and then their forward has openings. At the end of the day, if you don't want to get out of the matchups, and I'm sure there's some contractual obligations, and I get it, but at least commit to, okay, well, at this point in 2029, we'll do it. And therefore, you're going to have a spot. We're going to do a home and home, just as if we're conference opponents, and that's it. If they would just come out and do that, like Joe Castiglione wants them to do, I don't know why they wouldn't. They have the ability to. It's not like we can't get it done. Oklahoma wants to, and I'm glad that Joe Castiglione basically said we're kind of done. We're tabling it. We're moving on and scheduling opponents for us, and we need to. And I hope that Oklahoma schedules great out of conference games. Obviously we're going to be playing in the best football conference in the country. I hope we continue to schedule, maybe a USC. I don't know if Lincoln Riley will pick up the phone. I don't think he would. His AD probably wouldn't pick up the phone, but schedule in Oregon, get some people on the books, and let's roll and forget about Oklahoma State. They can do it. They just need to commit to us, and we'll commit to them and get it rolling. I don't know. I just think it's goofy. It's the best thing for their brand. That's all I got to say, to play against us.
And it makes less sense for Oklahoma to want to schedule them, because, again, we kick their ass almost every single time. We would essentially be losing a game against a group of 5 team that is, a warm up or an exhibition or whatever you want to call it, to put them on the schedule, because the SEC is moving to it to a 9-game conference schedule, leaving just 3 games for out of conference play. And typically they have one towards the end of the season where they rest up players. Who knows what that exactly is going to look like once the SEC makes that transition and Oklahoma and Texas do move over. But like, why Oklahoma can now that Oklahoma State just refuses to do anything and cooperate, Oklahoma can go schedule a Mercer, Citadel, and get those easier games rather than having to, wake up for a rivalry game or the in-state rivalry game. Like it's gonna suck not having Bedlam. I wish it did happen because they are fun, regardless of that we kick their ass every time. But it's the way of the road, I guess. I'm sure in like 10 years they'll come back and say, all right, we're open to this again. Maybe once they get rid of the current AD and Gundy retires, but I just don't see it happening for a long time.
And maybe the thinking is, and I can't necessarily blame them, if they keep Oklahoma off the schedule, it's an easier path to the college football playoffs. Granted, it's going to 12 teams, so in my opinion, you can lose a game or two. You could lose 2 games, and you can still make the playoffs, so it doesn't really matter. Looking at Oklahoma's future matchups, and I don't think we ever talked about it. SMU, OU scheduled a home-and-home with SMU. Next year, Oklahoma is replacing Tennessee with SMU. Oklahoma's going to be hosting them in 2023 and then be on the road in 2027 at SMU. My initial thought was I'm glad we got SMU, for next year. That's a quality opponent. But I'm thinking for 2027, getting to play in Dallas 2 times in that year, I feel like that's huge for recruiting. To go down to Dallas. That was my initial takeaway. We don't have to drown on it, but I just wanted to know what your thought on was scheduling that home and home.
Yeah, it's going to be nice. And hopefully the Texas game that year, Oklahoma's a home team, because then they get to invite recruits to the game. And clearly at SMU, I don't think that the away team can invite recruits over, but I'm sure that SMU will be inviting local high school players, and I'm sure Oklahoma will probably be recruiting a couple of them, similar to this last weekend where Malachi Coleman was at the Nebraska game. He still got to see both schools that he's interested in, and I think started leaning more towards Oklahoma. I'm excited for it. I was excited when I saw that SMU was a replacement team. I think that they're trying to rebuild that program to its heyday. I don't know if that's happening anytime soon, but they're talented. They've got some talent on that squad.
They do, and can't wait for 2025 and 26 when we've got a home and home with Michigan. That's going to be a fun home and home. I'd love to go up to Michigan to go watch a game up there in 26. So, but yeah, overall, Oklahoma State, I'm glad we're finally going to turn the page. If they just would have committed, I bet they're going to come back around. They're just they're hurt right now. So they'll come back and they'll schedule Bedlam with us and it'll be all right. So do you have any other thoughts, or do you just want to roll into your end of video challenge?
Let's do the end of video. So we're going to do a 2-parter today, since there was technically two segments, I guess, for today's show. First one, score prediction for the Kansas State game, or do you think Oklahoma covers? And part 2 is, what do you think about Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State? Are they just being big babies about it, or do they have a point? Is Oklahoma hurting the history of the Bedlam rivalry just for money?
Here's at the end of the day, if Oklahoma State had the opportunity, like you said, they do the exact same thing. They're just upset they didn't get the opportunity. So we can finally move on from that. So if you made it this far, we appreciate it. Hit the like button. Again, like we said, the like button helps us out a bunch. Also, do the end of video challenge. That helps us out equally as much as liking the video. Takes 2 seconds. Give us your thoughts. We'd like to hear some feedback. And be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn the notification bell on. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. And we'll be back on Friday. And there's a ton of recruiting talk to go over on Friday. I think everyone's going to really enjoy the recruiting video for that day. And we're going to jam pack it with a lot of talent is going to be visiting this weekend for the OU K-State game. So again, we appreciate it, and we will catch you guys on Friday.